Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast series powered by citiesabc.com, openbusinesscouncil.org, and fashionabc.org. We've been portraying the world leaders and thought leaders and creators that are creating narratives that can actually make our society, our cities, and our businesses better. And in this series, I think what for me is the most passionate part that I have here is the people. We have people from around the world, different cultures, different backgrounds, but all of them have in common a positive way of looking at how we can actually create a better narrative for society. And in a time of fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and all these emergent technologies, we are more probably disrupted than ever in the history of humanity, especially in the last 30,000 years of humanity. We didn't change much, but in the last probably 100 years, we changed more than ever. And in the next 10 to 20, will be even faster. So there's a velocity. So one of the things that is critical for this is precisely how we live in cities, how we create our cities, how we plan, how we manage them, and as well concepts like smart cities and what makes a smarter city, which is something that for me is even more important. So I welcome to our series Andrea Winders, that is one of the leading, I would say, one of the thought leaders and personalities in the industry. And Andrea Winders is executive director of the Smart Cities Council for the UK, but as well with international liaison. And Andrea is as well a very special personality. She's a creative Manchester-based, for now, but UK-based entrepreneur and expert in technology, infrastructure, and smart cities, but as well someone that looks at smart impact, social impact, and social economical areas. And in terms of the work she has as executive director of the Smart Cities Council, she managed the organization growth and drive objectives for the expansion of the smart agenda through the country. The Smart Cities Council is an organization that works to create action and impact around the key challenges and opportunities facing cities and communities today. Andrea has been as well a creator. She's actually a painter and an artist, but as well a very high-profile personality that has been working with a lot of hubs and international big corporations and cities. That includes the likes of Amazon Web Service, AWS, Ernst & Young, ENA, Hub, Oracle, and GHD, among 100 plus international members. And in the UK, this is one of the biggest ecosystem of cities that incorporates a relationship with the engineering service and digital infrastructure of the giant Valmont, life safety technology company Clevertronics, and smart cities buildings dashboard provider Bueno Systems, and digital transformation software Trident, and foundations, other foundational companies that are involved. Andrea has been working on a lot of cities with a lot of councils, with a lot of municipalities, and in a lot of projects that impact society in a lot of different ways and communities. So one of the things I'm looking forward to talk with her is precisely the concepts of smart cities, the concept of how we can actually apply this to our communities, and precisely demystifying as well all these challenges. And I think one of the things that I know that Andrea has is that she has a human side that is quite unique in terms of the way she reacts and she actually builds relationships. And I know that from all the people that I prepared for the interview, how warm they are towards their leadership and capacity to look at the cities of the present, the cities of the future, and all these smart cities infrastructure that are more important than ever and technological, but as well human focus that we need for that. So Andrea, welcome to our series.
Thank you, nice to be here. And also, can I add that I'm interested in smart for everyone, so not just for cities. Yes, we'll be strong in cities, but let's be smart for everyone. So I think that's where I start, really.
Completely. I'm sorry, I'm with a bit of a disturbance of my nose. It started now, but it should be okay. So let's start by precisely that part, the human part of yours. So I know that you are a lady of a lot of different capacities, but let's start. How did you start your career? A bit of your history, education, and as well, how did you come up to be a lady in smart, I would say smart society. How we can actually make this, and how there was a trajectory to reach here.
Okay, I've not followed a normal pathway. I think we know each other a little bit now, Dinis, and you'll have understood that I don't follow the norms of most people. And so I didn't follow the traditional educational route. In fact, education and higher education came at a time when I was being quite rebellious. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, and because of that I chose to do languages, and I did the absolute, so never give me a challenge, because I tend to do either win it or do the opposite of it. I class myself as an urban disruptor, and I think I've been a disruptor all my life, but that's coming into its own in the present tense in what I'm doing today. But yeah, all through my life I had to win at everything. I'm a winner, and I have to do the best that I can. I also have difficulty, because I'm creative, in looking at a problem and not finding a solution for it. And again, that's been a common thread throughout all my life. So I had a place at Salford University to do business and French, because I was going to go and work in the EU. And I took a year out to get some money behind me. And I actually ended up never taking my place at university. I fell into work. And that was because I was driven by wanting a company car, if that sounds silly. And I fell into a sales career, and I actually had a really, really, really successful sales career, which the pinnacle of which was winning the biggest ever account in Europe and setting up a European sales division for a company that I was working for at the time. I won a company called GE Capital, and that was a $55 million a year contract. So I fell into my early career, which was in sales, but because everything in life is about sales, it stood me in such good stead. And I think I'm still on that trajectory, looking at what do I want to win, how that focus has now gone into people and technology and change, and what can we do better, and how can we use technology for good. So I think my early career, my rebelliousness has actually stood me in good stead. At this point in my career and in my life, where I can put all my experiences together, all my rebellious, I've calmed down a little bit, I'm not too much of a rebel nowadays, still got a little streak in me, and my creativity, because as you mentioned, I paint. That's one of my paintings behind me. I paint, I played the piano to a very high level. I used to read a lot, by now Audible. So yeah, I think it all comes together to create this multifaceted approach that I have to smarter everything, because I'm interested in health, wellness, living, housing, transport, the air quality, sea, what are the future careers. I'm interested in every aspect of smart and smarter. And I've had an interesting pathway. Do you want me to touch on some of the interesting highlights from my career?
No, that's the most beautiful part of these interviews.
Okay, yeah. So as I said, I started my career in sales, and I'm a very much, I have to win at everything, as I've already said several times. You'll get that picture as we start to talk. And I used to become the best salesperson in the company and then leave, because the challenge had gone. I need a challenge, constantly need a challenge, which is why I'm in the right industry right now. I also set up and started several businesses, and the most famous of which was called Pink Ladies. And what I thought at the time was, I thought I had a taxi company, that I was creating a taxi company for ladies. What I didn't realize was I created a tech company where the product at the end of it happened to be a car ride. Didn't realize what I had. And even though I didn't follow a traditional educational pathway and go to university, I learned more through operating Pink Ladies than I could have done ever at any even PhD level, because it was just phenomenal. I mean, it's possibly a question for another podcast, because on its own it was phenomenal experience. I'll give you a couple of highlights. I designed a service that had no cash in the cars. It was all driven by, before the days of smartphones, they were called PDAs. I incorporated sat nav into the system, and it was all around safety for women. And as a result of what I did at Pink Ladies, I was invited to Buckingham Palace to meet the Queen in recognition of what I was doing for women's safety. I was Woman of the Year. I also I was a finalist in the Startup of the Year business. I won Make the Big Difference Award. I won several awards, but at the same time as I was winning all these awards, my local authority, because I'll go back to being a rebel, I didn't want to be a taxi company. I wanted to find another way. And in order to expand the business, which was the key to success, we couldn't be a taxi service. So I found a loophole in law. And from the day that I found the loophole and opted out of being a regulated taxi service, the unions and my local council were lobbying to find a way to stop me from operating. I'll not go into too much more detail because it's really fascinating, great fun. The BBC did a series about me. They called it Candy Cabs, if anyone wants to look at it. It's not, I think you still catch bits of it on YouTube. They wouldn't pay me enough money, so I only let them be inspired by what I was doing. If they'd have paid me more money, we'd have written some stories because they were phenomenal stories. As part of it, I also, by the way, advised the Mexican government. I helped set up companies in Russia. In Dubai, when you go to the airport, the taxis with the pink roofs on, they're driven by ladies. They were inspired by my work in the UK. But yeah, it was absolutely fascinating time and taught me so much. And yeah, lots of stories to tell around that, but that's maybe for another day. But however, I believe that was the start of my smart cities and my smarter journey. It was understanding that tech and understanding what we could do with it and how it could improve lives, because we also took it into caring as well. So we used to care for our older ladies and accompany them to hospital appointments and manage their hospital appointments. So I've had quite an interesting past. That was probably my most interesting part of my past. And the part that really ignited my smart cities was when I was headhunted by Sunderland City Council to be their executive director for enterprise. And they asked me not to fit in with the normal red tape and governmental systems. They said, be a rebel, stay independent. And it was while I was there that I realised that we need massive shift in what we do, for example, in retail on the high street, because in the UK, we've got a big issue with failing retail, failing towns. And it was that really, really set me on my smart cities journey, that where I am today.
Oh, that's first of all, congratulations. And I didn't mention that in the bio, but I'm glad that you highlighted that. So it's really impressive. So let's look at that work because before I go to the rest of the questions I have here. So when we work with this organization, Pink Ladies and all the things, so you work with a lot of small entrepreneurs and you actually create an ecosystem. And as well, you dealt with the first ways of technology, a bit like before Uber and a lot of different things. So what did you told you about the reality? Because I think people like us, especially on these podcasts, are normally quite sophisticated. Now, probably the SMEs people are not listening to this podcast, which they should. And it tends to be more, sometimes there's a level of knowledge of tech or even business that you can only learn when you do it. And I will just use my own example. I work in an investment bank and I actually helped create a bank, but I did all the mistakes as an entrepreneur dealing with banks, which is a paradox. But that just tells the complexity of the reality versus the norm or the education, the academy. And this experience that you have is what makes really special people like you and an organization like yours. So if you could tell about that experience, especially with the ladies, with the different communities that you work and the community that you build.
Yeah. So we started with an idea and we actually went from 0 to live within 3 months. And at the time, there was no technology really in this industry. If you think of it as the taxi industry, and what we've got today is Uber and really exciting. At that time, there was nothing. There were no smartphones. There was nothing because it was in 2005. So I designed the service. I didn't know how we were going to get there. So that's the first challenge to those starting in businesses. It's got a vision. How am I going to actually get there? What's the strategy behind this? The strategy was also to make the cars very distinctive. So we wanted the service to be fantastic, supplied by technology, absolutely safe, and also give opportunities to women who hadn't maybe worked or hadn't been in the workforce for a long time to come and work with us. So we had great fun finding drivers. I mean, we had women ringing up, and I'll not name any names in case they ever do watch this, but one of our potential drivers rang up and she said, before I start talking to you, I'm going to tell you now I'm fat, and I'm sorry, I'm just telling you as it is. She said, I'm fat, and I usually find that when I go for interviews, I don't get the job, and I think it's because of my size. And we said, we don't care what you look like. Can you drive? Are you a nice person? Well, then you're in. So we took ladies of all shapes and sizes and nationalities and experiences. We didn't care about experience. It was about whether they cared. So it's about caring. And I again, I bring that into my life today. It's about caring. So then I had to find, how are we actually going to run this service with with no cash in the cars, no technology that does exactly what we want. And I'm not a technologist, so I find things that work and bring them together. So I managed to find a piece of software that was used by engineers to book appointments. And I managed to couple that to sat-nav. And at the time, smartphones were called PDAs. And we bought PDAs for all the cars and holders to put them in and chargers. And then I managed to cobble together a very crude system in the back office to take the money so that we charge per journey, but the money, because we could work out what was A to B and we managed to put a mechanism behind it, we could actually run. So I cobbled together an Uber before Uber, but it very, very crudely. It developed on because, oh my goodness, you talk about learn as you go. The actual system went down on night one, and we had a driver stuck in the middle of Manchester with people all around our cars were pink, by the way. People stood all around our pink cars going, what's this? And the driver was stuck and panicking. So we had a massive learning curve. But we took ladies with no experience. We trained them in self-defense because we wanted our ladies to be safe. We trained them in first aid in case there's ever any issue. We trained them in technology, in my basic technology and how to work with it. And for some of these women, they'd never used tech before. So it was really, I actually had to train my business partner because I was too techie for them. So my business partner had to break everything that I said into layman's terms and get them working. But we launched, we're a members club. We charged a nominal fee of £1 for members, and it was about giving women confidence and getting them out, whether it was into work or if they're on a night out, getting them home safely. There was an issue in London, particularly London at the time, but in the suburbs as well, of illegal taxis. And we wanted our members to be in no doubt that this was their car. So the cars were pink. We bought Renault Kangoos. It was the most number of Renault Kangoos ever bought by a company. We bought 14. We covered them in pink vinyl. We had pink Ferrari leather inside. Each car had a name and a personality, and I am in the middle of writing a book because it was such an exciting time. But we launched, we found a celebrity who at the time had been in she'd won I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which was quite high profile at the time, and her name was Kerry Katona, a local celebrity, and we did a deal with her. We managed to do deals with everyone, actually. I did a deal on the technology, I did a deal on everything, because we were so interesting, people wanted to work with us. And my business partner, Tina, was the opposite to me. She was a little bit like Dolly Parton. She'll love that if I say that. It's a little bit like Dolly Parton, and she was the fluff and I was the serious, like, I'll push this business forward. But we worked well together. And we launched, we went live, and we, in a town of about 90,000 women. By the end of the first month, we had 10,000 members. And so we had to then, we didn't realize how difficult, there's another issue for people starting business, managing a database. And it's a lot easier now that there's tech, but managing the database was quite a challenge. Within the first month, I had to replace the engineer software. I won't mention the company we were with originally because they're still in business, but that I had a famous "take it all away" speech that my drivers and my staff talk about, because it was funny as well as serious. But we managed to find a second system, and make it work, and it was great. Once we got all the parts playing together and one seamless interface, it was absolutely fantastic. We had issues with licensing, with the licensing officer, because in our local town, you had to take the knowledge, very much like in London. And I've already mentioned, we had ladies who were returning to work. Some had lost their confidence and we were giving them a chance. One particular lady was dyslexic and we were giving her a chance when she couldn't even get interviews for jobs. And we had to pass a knowledge test. And the officer said to us, well, I'll tell you, it was £70 a head, and we paid for the women because some of them had no money. So we were giving them access to funds as well. And we employed them as well. We weren't a taxi company, we employed all our drivers. So it was a good career for them as well. And so he said to me, your drivers will fail, and they'll probably fail 3 or 4 times. And it's £70 each time to take the test. And as we were paying for it, I didn't want us to pay all that money, £280 per head to get. We had 40 drivers to get through. So I said, I can't do that. How about, because I didn't know the area, if I learn how to take the test and you let me take it until I've passed the test and learn how to write a training program to pass the test. And so they let me. They did a deal with me. And we got all 40 drivers through first time. And I used to have taxi drivers coming, ringing me up saying, can you come and train us? I said, no, because they threatened to put a horse's head in my bed. It was a really strange time. It was a very, like a little local mafia, the taxi world. But I said to them, I'm not your competition, we're complementary. So yeah, real challenges with the technology, but we got it to work, and we got it to work really well. And then we worked with, as we went along, apart from fighting the government and creating new loopholes and all sorts of things I shouldn't have been doing, but I did because the rebellion never left me. We changed lives, and it was really important for us to change lives. So we had passengers with dementia who we gave freedom to their carers and to the passengers. We had young ladies, we had a couple of young ladies who had bad experiences, and we gave them the confidence to go out again. It was absolutely great. And yeah, we used to run events for our members, and we took it far more beyond just the normal service, but the tech underpinned everything.
Well, first of all, it's a privilege to have that experience here, and thank you for all the work you did. I'm sure you changed the lives of these people, so like you said, there's a huge component of education, because like you said, most of the things we speak in this podcast, for us is normal, and for a lot of people, but it's for the majority of people is not. No one actually knows this topic. So let's touch that part, because I think, of course, you are right now dealing with the most advanced technology of all times, that is smart technologies in general. Like you said, it's not just cities, but cities implies all different kinds of smart technologies. And this is changing the world as never in history, but we are just in the beginning. But like you said, we have to go back and explain to the rest of the people. And I had a similar experience with you when I created actually Open Business Council, that I remember that I was approached and people tell me your content is very sophisticated, no one understands it. And I was, what? But I'm an academic, and I thought, but this is not academic. One thing is what I do in the university, I do it on purpose for anyone to be able, no, people really don't understand it. And then I start talking with SMEs and start, oh my God, it's much more complex. So how do you think this gap can be changed? And how can you use this technology, these tools, to empower people? Because at the end of the day, the gap between the digital divide is bigger than ever. We have as well, like I mentioned to you offline, the concepts of digital literacy, if people are digital literate or not, digital obesity, digital laziness, and I created a new one, digital overdose, which I think it's something that happens. So people effectively are in front of devices all day, but they become like zombies. So how do you see this, especially in the light of what you did, and as well right now, and bridging to the different stage of your career when you start getting into dealing with smart cities? And how did you end up in smart cities? I think that's an interesting one as well.
Yeah. Well, I think what we need to do is to expand the reach, and also to look at education as well, and start. We all know that our children are using devices at very young ages, whether it's for gaming or watching YouTube videos. I mean, I've got grandchildren. I know I don't look old enough, but I've got grandchildren. I've got grandsons, and they don't consume any television. They watch YouTube, and it's a completely different way. And I think that in order to normalise digitalization, but also make it not scary and something that people are frightened of the advances, is to just bring it down a little bit, like my former business partner used to do, and talk about it in layperson's terms, and bring it down to an educational level whereby it becomes part of everyday life for young children as they're coming up. But then we talk about I think we need to start talking about the benefits and not about the hardware. So what we used to do at Pink Ladies was I would understand the hardware, and I would understand the software, and Tina would talk about what it does and how to turn it on. So I think it's understanding the language that we need to get to change, to make it more available to everybody, and not something that feels out of reach. There's a cost here as well, and there's also a connectivity, because across the UK, I can only give the example of the UK because I've not worked in this in other countries. We've got an absolute disparity in terms of service and availability of connectivity. And also in the UK, we're very much stuck in the realms of infrastructure. And when you talk smart cities to any organisation in the UK, it's primarily they're thinking about infrastructure, they're thinking about 5G. I think we should start thinking more about people. and what do people want, and how do we use technology to make people's lives better. And it's when we start thinking like that and move away from infrastructure, because infrastructure tends to give picture of somebody's watching me, the cameras are watching me, the street lights are watching me. It's that big brother mentality. And I think we need to start thinking more about how can this benefit people. So I was talking just within my family, I've got an elderly mother, and I was talking to my sister about putting some sensors into our home so that we know when she's moved around, or if we know she's not moved around, we know she's turned the kettle on. And that's completely unintrusive. We won't see anything. We'll just, and my sister said, oh, we can't spy on. I said, no, it's about understanding. It's not about spying on people. It's about enabling them to be independent, to be better in health, to have better control of their energy. I mean, I shouldn't probably say this, but I don't like smart meters. I think we could do far more with smart meters. We could do far more with energy in the house and understanding how we use energy. It's about technology used in the right way, but demystifying. Very much like you, Dinis, I found that when I first started talking to businesses and to local authorities about smart cities, I spoke a foreign language. And they just didn't understand what I was saying. And I thought I was talking in really simple terms. But even, I mean, I was working with some people who were in the nuclear industry. So these were nuclear physicists. And I spoke a different language. And they used to like my enthusiasm, but not understand what I was saying, which was really frustrating, because I used to try and talk to them in a scientific way. But I think it's about breaking it down in terms of what it means for whoever we're working with. And also consider places as well, and also consider who is living in those places and what do they want. So, for example, if you look at ONS data for a place, you can actually do an assessment. I want to put this into an algorithm. I've got a way of looking at a place and understanding where its gaps are by looking at something I call magnetism, which is looking at, how they are investing, what they like at innovation, lots of things. I think we could create an algorithm to understand where the gaps lie in a place that could actually complement what you're doing very, very well. And it would consider the demographic, it would consider the age of the demographic, and it would look at health gaps. So there was an area I was looking at in Cumbria where too high a percentage of the population were over the age of 55 and economically inactive because they were unwell and unable to work. So for me, in that instance, it would be considering how can smart and how can technology with people help these people to be better, healthier, and actually maybe become more economically active, because then that helps their mental health, and then that helps to solve problems within the healthcare sector, within the benefit sector, within employment sector, because there was an over-employment in that area, too many jobs and not enough people to fill them. So yeah, lots of things like that. And you asked a question about how I moved into the smart city world. I think honestly, I think I've always been in the smart city world from the day I was born, and just not realized what it was, because I've always been looking for something else. It actually came when I left local authority, having seen the issues that there were and seen the issues around resources, financial and also people resources. In the UK, we've been living in austerity. We're not at the moment, but I feel unfortunate we're going to go back into austerity. And for me, that's when technology really should come into its own and help us to drive savings and drive efficiencies and make life better for people. But due to austerity, a headcount massively reduced. So just actually carrying out day-to-day functions within those authorities, very, very difficult. But yet the public and the citizen has no one else to turn to find solutions for what they're doing. So for me, that's when I started thinking really genuinely about smart cities and how can we use collaborative technology and collaborative thinking and person-centric being to create change. I almost want to create alternative government, but I don't want to create alternative government, but I do, such that the local authorities in the local areas can do the services like emptying the dustbins, looking after recycling. But actually, can we use technology and smarter technology to help in adult social care? How can we use digital governance so that we can link NHS to adult social care, to people, to carers, to then provide a better service, so that when the carers, I'll pick on carers for now, when the carers are going to visit people in their home, they don't spend 3/4 of the time that they're there filling out paperwork. that they actually spend the time that they're there caring for that person. And if they happen to be the only person that elderly or that person with a difficulty has seen that day, that they actually find time to do the real caring element of the job. So that's, for me, it was actually coming out of local authority that started me thinking, how can we apply this to make up for the shortfalls that we've got, but then make life great? Let's not just make life okay. Let's make life great. And that's where I am now, is about making life great for everyone. And it's a vision, but it's a vision that can be achieved. I fought the government when I had Pink Ladies. I created a loophole in law. That was pretty difficult. If I can do that, I can start to work on making life great.
Wow, it's so inspiring. And as well, like you said, the tools exist. So it's about how we can, I love this. It's like, how can we make life great and actually do it now? So let's look at this. So you start working on these technologies, and you are one of the most well-connected people in the UK on these areas. But we have a lot of work to be done. So I love your rebel side. I have that as well. Probably I don't tell it too much, but I have a bit like you. When I see something that is broken, I will not give up. I don't care if it doesn't bring money or whatever. The stuff will find it. So how can we do that? Because I think there's a lot of energy, and I feel that even with my own team and the people that I work close. Is I think for me, sometimes I think my energy is too big for the rest of the people. They get frustrated to follow me. But one of the challenges, I'm sure that happens with you, but is how we can actually, when I'm probably calmer to explain, then I can get fantastic results. And I like the metaphor, what you described about you and your partner, that you had a very complementary, you are the geek and the structure, technological vision, and she could actually transform that and explain it very well. And this is really, I think it's missing massive with all the things we discussed, because let's look at the concept of smart cities. Even at the moment, it's a completely chaos. I don't think there's 2 or 3 people that understand the concept of smart cities, much less smart society. So let's touch that, especially you as an industry expert. How do you look at this? And then go how we can, from this, to go to the other challenge that you mentioned in terms of making the society smarter.
So quite early days for smart cities in the council in the UK. We only launched here 3 weeks ago, even though I've been working in the industry for a long time. Globally, we've been in existence for years, for 11 years. So it's quite exciting for me to start at that ground zero level here for me. So I think what we need to do is not look to government. That's the first thing. We are led by government, or we look to be led by government, particularly in the UK, and I think that's what we need to stop doing. Because if we wait for government, we'll be stuck in procurement forever. It's like procurement limbo forever. And what will happen is we'll have delivered the same old. We've got political issues in the UK. I'm not political. I work, not in the slightest bit. But what I see is it's cyclical, and we go through cycles. What we have to do as rebels, and I think we have to think of ourselves as such, and disruptors, is to break that cycle. And I think the key to this is to get the technology companies and those who can deliver change, so those monies with power and influence, to work together and not against. And I'm talking about telecom companies. As opposed to sitting in their little silos and having their 5G connectivity in their silos and working separately. I think it's time that we started to collaborate and start to act and think differently, even if we have to create a safe space, which means that all their IP and all their controls are separate, and we have a safe place in which to play. I think it's that, and I think society needs to start pushing for this change as well. Maybe not quite as extreme as Extinction Rebellion and blocking roads, but I think it's time for society to start, our people start wanting to drive that change. But to do that, they need to understand what is needed, and I think it's to be able to see the vision of what could be. And instead, I think the media also, while I'm touching on this, media has a lot to do with it. So if I look at, I tend to not watch the news too much now, because it's also depressing. And I think if we could get the media to take a different message about what is possible, and report on what is possible and what we could do and what we could achieve, and positivity, then I think we'll start to see a change in attitude towards smart and smarter. And I think that maybe, if one of my ambitions, or one of my goals, and I will be pursuing this pretty soon, is to take on a hospital. or an NHS trust, and see what we can do to help that NHS trust without them procuring us. So it'll take some people with some bravery to come with me and take the chance to apply their technology within that environment to see what we can do to make things better. I like robots. And I think that some of the functions that are carried out within the hospital could be undertaken by robots. For example, collecting drugs from the pharmacy to get down to a ward to release a patient to go home. Bed blocking in the NHS is a big problem. But for me, a hospital is a city. So if we start with, let's take on something that's dear to everybody's heart, which is a hospital, and which actually can affect lives and wellness. And let's see how we can use technology in that environment for good, to use it as an exemplar to start winning hearts and minds, because this is change, it's change management. And to get people to change, we have to win their hearts and minds. So it's not an easy task, but we can do it. And it's getting away from thinking infrastructure, and more into services and what's in it for me.
So you touch education, you touch infrastructure, and you touch organizations, and as well communities. So I think the challenge is precisely making a liaison between, and you touch media as well. And so I think the media is definitely one of the biggest problems, because at the moment we have traditional media that are still stuck with the news, kind of driven news, and actually news that are, most of them sensationalists, not really, there's no news about technology on the mainstream media. And when there's news about technology, it's about the problems with Facebook, it's about the problems with AI, and all is on the negative side. When all of us are using this right now, that's why we have the possibility of you in the north of England, me in London, and my team all over the world. So it's this kind of capacities that there's no case studies. And even, for instance, recently I was interviewed by one of the biggest media in the world, and of course was about the failure and a problem that happened in blockchain and technology related. But even during the interview, I was trying to say, come on, guys, this is not the problem of blockchain. It's a problem of business, corporates, and management. But the focus of the editorial part was the scandal. So definitely we have a big problem on the narrative. So how can we leverage these kind of things? And your experience with the Pink and a lot of other projects is really very strong, because effectively you had that experience in multiple cities, and you have that right now with the Smart Cities Council. So let's probably tell how the Smart Cities Council work and what you've been doing, some case studies that you want to highlight. I think that helps us making the liaison with all these different things.
Yeah, so Smart Cities Council is a membership organisation, and the design of it is to bring together academics, governments, businesses, entrepreneurs and innovators to solve problems. So to come together and take some big ideas and some quite small ideas and find solutions, but not deliver just a paper, deliver actions and then report back on the actions. So we've had some great successes. At the moment, we're looking at digital twins because there's great interest, and certainly Cities ABC falls into this area. Oh, by the way, can I mention that, talking about media, one of the things I loved about Cities ABC was actually seeing the measurement of fake news, real news, and social influence. I just think that's phenomenal. I actually think things like that that's going to start changing attitudes, to see actually this is fake news. My experience from Pink Ladies will actually come into play with Smart Cities Council. So we'd be doing a great job influencing government, lobbying, getting technology companies to talk to governments about great problems, solving issues. I've got two projects on the go at the moment around health, and that's about technology to solve health, and we'll have events around that. So not even place-based. It's not always about being about a place. It's sometimes about being about wellness. But the way that I worked and we worked within Pink Ladies was around public relations. So we became our own news broadcasting organisation. Now, Smart Cities Council tends to put out newsletters a little bit like a lot of other organisations do. What I learned when I had my Pink Ladies was you can actually influence the news by becoming the news. There was quite a famous publicist in the UK called Max Clifford. I don't know whether your audience know him or remember him. He had a bit of bad publicity himself towards the end of his life, but I knew Max when he was at his heyday, and he used to advise me for free on PR. So I didn't spend a penny on advertising when I had Pink Ladies. I did it all from PR, and the secret is storytelling. And it's storytelling in a way that breaks down the complicated, makes it easy, makes it interesting, and keeps you topical and in the news. And that's the approach that we'll be taking. That's the influence and the approach that I'll be bringing to Smart Cities Council. We will start storytelling, very much like I said about Tina, we used to break it down. We'll start storytelling in a way that makes what we're doing every day. And we'll take real world examples for everything, and we'll use that PR. And I've engaged a young PR guy to work with me. He's 19 years old, so he's next gen. Oh, he lives in cyber world, so it's great. He's helping me to understand how to work through social media, because even though I've touched on social media in the past, it's relatively new. But yeah, it's storytelling. We will start to do that, and we will obviously do the technical journals as well, but we'll do the everyday as well. If I give you an example of the only month that I measured the value of what we were doing PR wise, it came to a value of 1.69 million pounds. If we'd have paid for advertising in the 1 month, the amount of column inches that we got from Pink Ladies was 1.69 million. And that's just about telling the right stories at the right level to the right people at the right time. And what I find now, because it was 2005 when I started Pink Ladies, it's still known, it's still remembered, and it's still talked about around the world. Wherever I go, people tend to remember Pink Ladies in some way, shape or form. So that's the way I think we start to change hearts and minds and start to move people away from the fact that 5G might become an atomic weapon and kill me, and that cameras are watching me, and Big Brother's recording my voices. I think it's that storytelling, and it's finding the great. So for example, the dentistry project that I've got on the go at the moment, once the results are in, we'll start storytelling about that. And that project is using assistive reality glasses, AI software, and people to solve the crisis in dentistry. And it's that kind of story, showing the solutions rather than showing the ambition. Because I think a lot of the coverage, obviously we have the negative stories once something has failed, but a lot of the stories that go into the press about what could happen if you research smart cities, there's no definitive answers to what a smart city is. And there's projections about what people think it is, but those tend to, if you dig down far enough, they will have been written by a PR company for an organization wanting to promote 5G or promote broadband or promote Wi-Fi. There will be a basis somewhere in an objective, producing a report or an article around infrastructure or whatever. And I think we can take that narrative and we can make it our own, and we can project what we want to project.
Completely, and I think it's really important. So for our audience, let's look at some case studies. But before that, let's look at the concept. So if you go to Wikipedia, the concept of smart city is a technological, modern urban area that uses different types of electronic methods and sensors to collect specific data. Information gained from the data is used to manage assets, resources, and services efficiently. In return, that data is used to improve operations across the city. Of course, this is Wikipedia. It's very technological. It's very old-fashioned because, of course, it's much below that. But then if you look at the United Nations, there's a section of the United Nations, and I think I want to put this, something interesting in your context, Andrea, and I want to go there. So mostly, for instance, in the United Nations, in Singapore Global Center Department, they said that building and shaping inclusive, livable, and sustainable urban areas is an essential development priority, reflected by the Global Center's creation of the dedicated Smart Cities program. And smart cities use technology and innovation to improve the urban environment, leading to improved quality of life, greater prosperity and sustainability, and engage and empower citizens. For an example, in Singapore, the Global Center of Smart Cities has been consistently recognized as a leading smart city. More broadly, digitalization is a key driver in improving lives and livelihoods. So, and of course, one of the biggest problems that when you look at this is that urbanization is defining humanity. 70% of the world populations, an additional 2.5 billion people live in urban areas, and this is by 2050. But most of the mega cities in the world have most of the population. And of course, a lot of countries like China, India are right now, and Europe as well, are putting a lot of focus on smart cities, as well in Latin America. And I know there's a lot of things in the UK. So as the leader of the Smart Cities Council, And I think this vision is closer to what you define so far and what I define as well. But there's a lot of work, like you said, because it's not just smart cities, it's smarter society and all of these technologies to create smarter environments. So from the work you've been doing, which is fantastic for people listening to us, what would be a couple of case studies that you could actually work on this? You mentioned your personal case study. Let's look right now from a smart cities or smarter society solutions.
Oh, I've got lots coming in the next 12 months, case studies that we'll be working on. So I'll pick them, and then I'll refer back to one that was really interesting around safety. So in the next 12 months, I'll be looking at energy and how we can look at off-grid energy and how we can use technology to make, I've got a vision to create virtual power stations, and so that we can help not only people to reduce the cost of living or the cost of energy, but also to maybe sell back to the grid, so actually to become cost negative. I think that's stretching a little bit, but it certainly reduce cost, but use new technology that isn't yet on the marketplace. I've got several contacts with businesses that are just about to launch, so it's bringing in new innovation. And it's how we can help to support things like safety, for example, how we can look at cyber, because one of the issues and one of the fears that everybody has is cyber security. When I was working in Cumbria, the WannaCry attack happened, and the local authority, because it was close to a nuclear power plant, was the worst attacked in the country. And the recovery is a small local authority with a very low income and revenue, and the cost to repair from WannaCry was £3 million. Their annual budget was only 1 million. So so one of my topics and case studies that we're taking on for 2023 is cyber everything. How we can understand cybersecurity better and how we can bake it into everything that we do. We'll never get rid of it, but how we can bake it into everything. One of the case studies and one of the projects I was involved with was around young people, and was also around stopping reoffending, because in the UK there's a particular problem with young people who are taken into care, who then get into the system and then tend to be the ones who become the offenders. I think it was something like 95% of the children who were in care in the area that I was looking at actually turned eventually into some kind of offender and had some kind of custodial sentence, and then also went into a reoffending cycle. So we thought, how can we use technology to help to solve this problem as a city, because it was in a city at the time. And we looked to places like New York, where they'd used the cameras for good, to, for example, thwart car thefts. And we thought, how can we use technology to help to identify these young people and then bring in multifaceted services like police, ambulance, education, social services, and even the NHS, to understand what is happening in those young people's lives with their extended family. So it involved infrastructure. Took a lot of persuading to involve the different services to collaborate, because they're all frightened about cybersecurity, touch on the case study to come, and they're all frightened about, they're all on different systems, so they didn't talk to one another. And it was a really big project. The budget was £4 million for it, but we managed to get the money together to actually set the project up. And we did do it. What we had was a system whereby if a young person offended and was presented in either, well, usually at the police station, their network would instantly be available. But also the system would touch and look at social services, look at the education. Had this person been schooled? Do they have any siblings? Are those siblings going to school? And we would look at the whole ecosystem of that individual or that gang. And the objective was to use technology and algorithms and AI to try and work with that family through technology, and then backed up by people, by the services, to try and intervene in a positive way to help that individual, but also to stop their siblings from falling down the same rabbit hole and going to the same system. Really, really interesting. Downside was it was funded by government, and it was very successful, and we managed to actually break the chain in a lot of circumstances. But with a lot of things like government, this is part of the reason why I would like to encourage businesses to get involved, was once the grant ran out, the project ran out. And so it was a fantastic film, and I will pick it up again at some point and probably put it through Smart Cities Council. But that's the kind of thing that I want us to be working on. That's the kind of case study that I wanted to be working on. I'm also really interested in digital governance, which came up as part of that, because the reason why the different services didn't want to work together was, number one, their systems didn't talk to one another, but also they were frightened of to share data and to share information. And it was because there was no governance around it. And we didn't know what we were doing at the time, so we didn't particularly apply digital governance. We did in a clumsy way, but I think that we need to look at case studies around digital governance. And I know you're particularly interested in digital trade routes. I've been examining those since we last spoke offline as well. We've just got so much to go at. I think we just need to focus. In the next 12 months, I'm going to be setting up strategic working groups to work on big subjects. And the big subjects for me are things like digital governance and digital trade routes. And then we'll be setting up task and finish groups. So that'll be around energy, cybersecurity, placemaking, community. Internationally, we've got a lot of interest in digital twins and what that can mean for cities, and what that can mean for businesses. I'm working with an organisation who do digital twinning of the sewer network, which to try and cut down on leaks. A lot of interest in retail, and tourism, and how we can use technology and make tourism smarter. So I've got a project coming up in the northeast of England around tourism, but I've suggested to them we use tourism as the anchor to create a smarter city infrastructure, because that's what's of interest to them.
Wow, fantastic case studies, and congratulations for that. So let me go through some of the elements that you mentioned. So you touched one important area that I think for the series is key, is that you mentioned the problems that people are afraid of sharing the data. So this is actually one of the biggest things when we talk about smart cities. People become panicking and they start understanding. First, I had a recent conference where I was keynote, and I had very sophisticated people. I remember that I spoke with one people that is behind one of the biggest digital organizations in the world. And that person was complaining that smart cities are terrible, that they create. So the person didn't understand at all what is a smart city, was in panic, and he was denial, although he works for a digital, very high profile organization worldwide. She's a paradox. So effectively, this is actually, I want to touch this part, and I know that what I love about you is that you can actually go through a lot of layers, is how we tackle this, first of all, because in the end of the day, until we tackle this, and like you said, if we talk about smart cities and people think 5G, and there's a lot of myths about 5G with China, and that 5G is going to kill us all, and all this kind of, in a lot of days, there's no making any sense for this. But if actually there's a lot of videos on YouTube, I don't understand why YouTube allows these fake videos to exist, because they are one of the biggest users of 5G. We are actually talking or syndicating this content actually in YouTube. So how do you see this, especially someone that is dealing, because you are right now, so in the UK, just for people listening to us, and I'll just read this. This is, for instance, from one PR that was submitted in November 7th, so this 1 month ago. Smart Cities Council, the world's longest standing, largest and most respected smart cities organization, is launching in the United Kingdom this month, founded 11 years ago, with the global headquarters in Washington, DC, North America, in the operations. And the Smart Cities Council is set up in the UK operations in Manchester, which is you leading. And the Smart Cities and its associated global impact initiative, everyone brings together governments, industry, academy, philanthropy, and charity. So this is the PR. People can find it in the website smartcitiescouncil.com. That is here in his interview in the different parts. So let's start with this part of the data, because it's really a big challenge. In one end, people are giving data for everything we do. You just need to have a smartphone or a computer. The computer knows more about your health than probably you do. But that's the problem, is that when you talk about this, the Department A doesn't speak with Department B, and they're all using data. But we have this myth, is that this is all terrible. So how do you kill this myth, and how do you take it forward?
Do you know what, when I talk to anybody about smart cities, almost the first question, of the first sentence that comes out of the mouth, but what about my data? It's almost, regardless of who I'm talking. So a bit like you, I was presenting to nuclear scientists a few years ago, and the chief executive of a major UK nuclear organisation, that was his first question.
Nuclear organization.
Yeah,
That's
I think
impressive.
you're more dangerous than me.
To say.
Yeah. I'm actually working on this question at the moment, and I think eventually it will be storytelling, and it's how we tell that story. But it's how it's telling the story when we've got the proof to show that actually you're in charge of your own data. What I would like to happen, so Tim Berners-Lee has been developing solutions for personal data pods. He calls his company Inrupt. And I'm working on a healthcare solution at the moment to connect siloed data in healthcare. But what I don't want to do is connect it and have that data anywhere on my platform or anywhere near me. So we're looking at creating personal data pods so that you would own your own data and it would come into your own data pod. And that it would be your choice as to whether you share it or not. And I think we need to get that element sorted and have data dealt with in a different way. So I mean, it annoys me when I get cookies come up on a website and most people just go click yes because they don't realize what they're doing. They're giving you, not you, they're giving the organization free rein to mine your data. And I think we need to change. We actually need to change the way that data is handled to give people the confidence that their data is not going. As you said, as soon as you pick up your phone and use it, you're actually sharing your data with everybody. It's about creating personal data pods. It's about using by identification so that you're protecting yourself, so that you know that your data is in a secure place. There's a company called GenR8 who are trying to do this by putting a wall between the user and the internet. But I think we can be more sophisticated than that. It's great. It's a great starting place and it's really a good idea. But I think maybe Inrupt pods might be the answer. We're experimenting with them at the moment. We're finding a few glitches with them. Don't tell Sir Tim Berners-Lee this, but we're finding a few glitches with them. So we're actually looking to solve them. But I think people need to have the confidence that they own their own data, that nobody's making money out of it. And we need to develop a system where if they do want someone to have the data, they give permission. There's a company in Spain called Veridas. If anyone wants to look them up, they're spelled Veridas, and they do facial recognition and voice recognition. But part of that, they're developing wallets, secure wallets, and I've been working with those guys as well. So what we're going to produce is going to be kind of a combination of what Sir Tim Berners-Lee thinks the internet would be if he reinvented it today, and what we can do with biometrics. And I think until we get that absolutely nailed down and that messaging out and correct, I think we'll always have that question about what about my data? What about this? What about, and until we get people confident in that, I think we're going to struggle. By the way, I get really excited when I see 5G on my phone, but it happens so infrequently. Yeah, I get really excited, but it happens so infrequently that it's a treat as opposed to normality. I get it in my garden at the very end of my garden. So
but in my case, I have it in my phone, but it doesn't work. So it's kind of, it's fake. Especially in central of London, it's a problem. It's a problem because it might be the line, but it's really because there's so much different. So this is really the most important thing, because we cannot solve the problems without looking at the elephant in the room. And that's what I love about your work. And I think your energy is contagious in a good way, which I share as well. So let's look right now, coming back to what you guys are doing, because it's really amazing things. So you mentioned smart health. So for people listening to us, please kill the concept of data. At the moment, unless you work for the KGB or the FBI, don't really mention, because any of your data is available. Anyone can get it. And this is something that people need to understand and actually interiorize. But please use it for your own sake. That's the problem that we're talking here. And I like this very, very loud, because it's something that until people really recognize this, we have a problem. So let's look at what you're doing in the UK. You launched in the UK, targeting the UK cities. And of course, the Smart Cities Council, I didn't mention that in the beginning, but it's a global organization, which you are the leader for the UK, and has a lot of things going on, a lot of companies that you mentioned and so forth. I don't know if you want to talk as well about your company Mothership. I leave that for you. I want to be very respectful of that, but you guys are doing really fantastic work. And like you said, right now is how we're putting all of this together. So I don't know if you want to talk about some of your goals as the UK, as some of the projects you touched some of them, but if you want to go a bit more deeper on that. And I know that we passed already 1 hour, so I want to be respectful of your time, but there's a lot of questions I have to do, so I want to be respected, and I think probably at least if you can go for a couple more questions, I would love to.
Okay. So at the moment in the UK, I don't need to go into the membership model. I hope people will be inspired enough to look up Smart Cities Council from how we've been discussing this. But we're a membership model. At the moment, I'm building the membership base, and I'm starting with academia, because I think it's important that we have the right base of academics involved with us to actually chair some of the task forces that we're going to be putting together. So the model will be in the UK. Members will be able to take part in task forces. At the moment, we've nominated the subjects, but members will be able to nominate subjects as well. So long as it's to advance to advance smart or advance smarter, then we'll pick up any task force that we can. It's also to connect. So it's to make sure that we're connecting universities with businesses, with entrepreneurs, with local governments, and it's to get governments around the table in a non-procurement arena, so they can talk to innovators and understand what can be done, and then not to look to that council or local authority or that government to solve it. So it's to change the dynamic away from expecting somebody to do things to me, and to actually drive the change ourselves. I believe that the Smart Cities Council will evolve tremendously in the next 12 months. The other thing that we're wanting to do is to take the message for the UK internationally. I was at Smart Cities World Congress recently in Barcelona, and I was really disappointed to see that the UK was not represented, or hardly represented, in terms of businesses, not represented at all in terms of the country. So this is about building an ecosystem in the UK, doing great things, delivering great outcomes, actually delivering change, talking about it, storytelling, and driving that story forward, and then showcasing. Any members that join Smart Cities Council, we want them to do well, to improve, to build their network, because it's only by building, a little bit like, a lot like Open Business Council. It's about building that network and working together and not being afraid and seeing everybody's competition. I started my life in sales, as I said, and everybody saw everybody else's competition. I never did. That used to lead to me to lots of sales. I mean, goodness, I won GE Capital because I collaborated with people. It's about working together to understand one another's strengths and not being afraid to work in that way, and create this great ecosystem for growth. So businesses in the UK quite often look to the government for grants. It's not looking for grants, it's looking, if it's applicable, yes, but let's look to collaborate to create a solution that maybe means that we can all pull all our strengths into it to make one new delivery option or one delivery solution, and we don't have to own everything. We can just do great stuff, and from that our companies will grow. And then tell the story, and tell the story loud, because what we don't do very often is shout about what we do. And my experience in telling stories and that value of it, £1.69 million worth of coverage in a month, was evidence. I actually sat on an aeroplane once, going on holiday, and read an article about me in the In-Flight magazine. And it's about getting that message out, but not in a very obvious way. And yeah, we've got really exciting times to come from Smart Cities Council. Looking forward to working with yourselves as well.
Fantastic, and congratulations. I know that is, I believe this is one of the most important things for our society and for cities in particular, but every city needs to be a smart city. It's just the way you do it. So yes. As one of the last questions, and I always like you said, storytelling is key. So in your website, you have a Smart Cities Readiness Guide, you have a Smart Cities Activator and Knowledge Resource. Do you want to touch a bit of this as a follow-up for the audience? Because I think it's a very interesting thing, and like you said, it's not just about smart cities. I think everyone in the city needs to know about this, because in the end of the day, if your city doesn't work, you have a problem. Whatever you are sophisticated or not, it actually comes, and actually for us, the UK, which is the sixth economy in the world, and is still one of the leading, at least powerhouses in terms of media and digital, it's actually struggling. Right now we have energy struggling, we have all the political issues. So I think this can actually make us a lot of difference. So if you want to talk about these parts, I think it's quite interesting. And this is a very interesting resource center that we have a Smart Cities toolkit. There's as well the podcast and all the different things that I think is important for people listening to us.
Yeah, that's so that element you're talking about is kind of the educate and the learn side of what we're doing. So we're not just about members, we're about educating also from terms of a place. The City Readiness Guide is kind of gap analysis. It's gap analysis and then understanding how the city, where the gaps are, what the city needs to do to move on. And to accompany that, we're putting together a framework. So we're looking at how the city or how the place or how the business can actually understand where it is in terms of smart and smarter, learn what it needs to do to fill those gaps, do them, and then have it checked that they've done them. So it's an accreditation process. And the next thing that will be announced by Smart Cities Council is an accreditation mark, so that it absolutely identifies that organisation or that element or that person as being smart and smart city accredited. A little bit like the red tractor mark that we have that says that this is a farm assured product. We're looking to do the same for smart, because as we touched on at the beginning, there's no one clear definition of what smart is. So we're going to drive forward this narrative. Readiness Guide is the starting point for it, talking to ISO as well. So there are a couple of ISO standards, international standards. We developed our own standards as well. We also, within our resources, we have a back catalogue of different case studies and pieces of work that we've done. But we're in addition, we have a smart practitioners course that an individual can undertake. Members have so many licenses, so they can put so many members of staff through the Smart Practitioners Guide and come out of it with a full understanding of what it takes to achieve the change within that place or that organisation to make smart really happen. And then from there, we'll start to build alumni of smart practitioners to drive forwards. If you look at the recruitment market, I was talking to a Smart Cities recruiter the other day, and I was asking her, when you are asked to recruit for smart cities, what is it you're asked to who are you asked to recruit for these organisations? Should engineers. So nobody is recruiting for smart city practitioners, for those who think in a smart way. They want engineers, and that is what we hope to really start to affect and start to change with our resources, with our Readiness Guide and with our Smart Practitioners course, is to start to change that. So we actually see jobs being advertised for smart city practitioners.
That is for instance a big thing, because most of the universities have no strategy around this, and I think again passes through the narrative and even the terminology. Because one of the things that there's around 600 million search results for smart cities. So that means there's a lot of search, but there's no narrative. Most of the cities don't even know what it is, and they get very confused about this. So I think that there's the work that you guys are doing, and I think that you particularly have been doing for all your career is really inspiring and powerful, and we need more than ever. So I know that we passed close to 1 hour now, so probably one or two more last questions. So from your experience, and you mentioned your personal experience, and a lot of different things. For instance, you work with a lot of communities, more sophisticated, less sophisticated, and you are as well someone that is very young, but as well with a lot of experience. And what I love is that you have more energy than a lot of my students in business schools that are 20-somethings that are struggling to discover or understand these things. So one of the things that you are doing, and I'm going a bit more technical, but it's one area that I love. So especially in your website, you have a lot of work right now related with digital twins and a lot of different areas that are touching, especially all the systems of smart cities and how it works. So partly there's, especially in the international part. So, and you mentioned digital health. So do you want to touch a bit of these areas? Because I think this is quite an area that I would like to touch. So there's digital communities, digital areas, and I think this is for everyone listening to us. Everyone can join these things. The point is that it's like digital democracy, which if you let our politicians be ready prepared, is partly our fault as well. So how can we work on this? And I know that you are doing, for instance, you've been doing the Digital Twin Week, the Smart Cities Academy. So there's a lot of things that you have. And you just mentioned, for instance, a lot of people are making courses that have no professional relationship, where this is an area that definitely, if you are in smart cities, metaverse, digital twins, you're going to get a job for sure, because there's a lot of jobs being created on this.
Yeah. I think digital twins, I've been fighting the corner for digital twins for a number of years now. I remember discovering BIM a number of years ago, and an emerging
so
technologist.
just can you just describe what is BIM for people that never heard, because most of people never heard.
So in my layman's terms, BIM is about for me, it's about automating the building process.
Yes.
So without going into technical detail.
No worries, no worries. It's a bit,
yeah, so for me,
for people listening, is building information management or modeling. Continue. Sorry, I just wanted, because it's these terms for us experts is actually a common sense, but for people never heard, most of people. But continue.
Yeah. So I met an emerging technologist who was also a gamer. And he'd written his own BIM level 4. So there are different levels of BIM. He'd written his own BIM level 4 programs, and nobody wanted to buy it. And what is so amazing about BIM, so this is what's so amazing about digital twin. So BIM is digital twin of a building, really, is that he could actually take the designs from an architect when they were in drawing format, put it into his BIM system, and he could actually spot where the structural weaknesses were before a single brick had been laid or a piece of steel had been put together. And it could have saved that development company and that architect an absolute fortune in terms of time and also effort if they just work with him. And digital twins and BIM are so exciting that you can actually see how the building functions before it's built and see it. So from a digital twin perspective, from a building, phenomenal. From a city, from a place, absolutely unbelievable. To be able to understand how that area functions, how the traffic moves. This for me is where technology for good comes in, as well as being digital twins. So I think in terms of the digital twin journey, we're right at the very beginning. BIM still is not widely accepted in the UK. Architects still like to design and to draw, and I think until we start to move away from things like this, so the more we can do like digital twin week, the better. One of the biggest issues we've got in the UK is in under the ground. I mentioned digital twin for underground, is leakage, water leakage, costing a fortune and a very valuable resource. So costing money, but also losing a very valuable resource. And I know an organisation in the UK who does all its work in the Middle East, and they would love to do digital twins of our sewer system and our water systems, but the UK just isn't ready for it. So yeah, we're doing some great work in digital twins, and I think in order to get digital communities, and this kind of trips over into what you said earlier about what we were saying earlier about data, I think we need to develop intelligent platforms that connect everything. But they connect everything with the person being in control of their own data. I have my own thoughts on this, and I will be putting it into a task force at a certain point. And it's about connecting everything. So, for example, it might be your bus service with, if that's the way of getting around, with your library opening times, if that's where you're going, or your shopping opening times, with into your home. But having your data protected, I think to get true digital communities, we need to start connecting things and connecting them in an intelligent way. And I think everything plays into that. So digital twins do play into that, so that we can understand, if you're managing the whole city, where there's a traffic jam, where there's a roadblock. Yeah, I could go on forever about digital twins. It's so exciting. I once, when I worked in Sunderland, here's an example of how a digital twin could have helped. I worked in Sunderland, and the city was brought to a standstill one day because we wanted to put in place a new road. And to put in place this new road, we'd engaged a company to do a traffic survey. And they were stopping every third car that was coming into the city to interview the driver about where they'd come from, where they were going, and how often they normally came that way. And it brought the whole city to a standstill, caused massive eruptions, made the news. It was so bad. If we'd have had a digital twin of the city, we could have actually modelled what would have happened if we built a new road, or because of data, obviously securely shared data, we'd have known anonymized data as to where that person had come from, because we'd have had their data. So for me, that is the future, and what I would like to see as the future is digitally connected communities where things are connected, but for a good reason, not just for no reason, and using digital twins for the right outcomes and to improve efficiencies and to make life better.
Yeah, completely. So it's really digital twin technology, like you said. It's actually everything right now is about digital twin, but it's again another area that we are struggling to understand, at least as society, not us. But and you could make optimizations of billions of dollars and actually make the cities much more effective. So last thing. So there's I would say three parts that I admire of you, that I know that I've been doing. One is your energy, contagion to life, and passion to connect people, and generosity as well to empower. The second part is your technical knowledge and industry knowledge, and the third is the capacity to connect communities. On this last part, which I think is still the most important between all the three are key, but how do you see this work? And I think probably is one of the things that's fantastic and very special in your career is how you've been actually connecting communities of entrepreneurs, community of doers, and now cities, communities, and organizations within cities. This is for me the most important thing, and it's the only way we can actually make our present a less disrupting present, because in the end of the day, all these technologies are making us the most advanced society in history of humanity. But at the same time, there's a lot of risks in civilization that we are facing. So how do you face this as a person, as a family person that you mentioned that you have your family, but as well as the community maker that you've been doing? Probably the last part that I would like to do, and I'll let you go because it's Friday as well, Friday evening in the UK.
Oh, it's no problem. It's no problem. So I'm a natural connector. So whenever I see anybody, I want to connect them, and I think of opportunities where I can connect them into. That goes across my personal life and my business life. In building this ecosystem for smart and smarter, I'm actually employing technology at the moment as an experiment, because I think it's about it's about your personal network and it's about your business network. So from the business network point of view, I'll be writing and putting out there. I'm going to try and coin a new phrase. I don't know the thoughticals. No, not articles, but thoughticals. I want to provide I want to inspire conversations and thoughts and interest around the area of smarter working together, collaborating. Within communities, I'm going to start within my local community, they're going to become a guinea pig. That they don't know it, but they're going to become a guinea pig to understand what we can do for a community to start to build change and how we do it from a ground level up. I've seen my local community rebuild its own retail centre, but that's been very much without technology. But I want to know what can happen within my community if we have a great connected system that works, that connects people in a really good way. How will that help us to retain young people and stop the drain to London, for example, because that happens. The young people want to go to university and don't come home, and then that means that the local demographic shifts. So I've got several layers of connect and wanted to connect. I mean, at this moment, I've got some software running on LinkedIn connecting me to new people. So I'm experimenting with technology to help me connect better and faster. I started running it on Tuesday this week, and it's working great. So I want to build my ecosystem connectivity wise from a company and from an organization standpoint. That's going to come through having interest in projects, interest in articles, interest in podcasts like this, and really being coherent and strategic about the message, but also then having a vision that drives that strategy. And at a community level, it's finding that way to have data that comes from connectivity, but putting the person in charge of their own data so they've got confidence, and then also that big cybersecurity question around it, so they're not worried about being hacked. Is that a good enough answer?
No, it's a fantastic answer, and I love this. And I think it's not what you said about the communities is really important. I think I'm more on the digital communities part of things, but my wife is very active on the local community, and I see the difference. Sometimes just parents, organizations, all of us listening, or universities. I try my children and family, friends, and all the stuff. I try all this to coach and mentoring. And I think for people listening to us, please follow Andrea and all her social media, which we're going to highlight, because that's so much you can learn. And I'm going to disrupt her a lot to come much more to this channel. And a lot of others, we're going to probably do one series about the future of cities. Definitely Andrea will be one of the people. But I think one of the things that I want is the experience and the wonderful things that she said. So think about this and put it in your life. Andrea, I have much more things, but I want to respect your time as well. Thank you so much. It's been inspiring, and actually knowing you for a while now, I'm more thinking about how to take it forward and work together to make the world better and use this technology in our serving us, not the other way around.
I agree. And keep thinking about technology for good. We can do this. We can make this change. And if we all work together, we can achieve great things.
and being persistent. Thank you so much.
Yes. See you soon.
Thank you.